The scale of modern aviation requires massive, centralized processing points. Millions of people filter through these corridors every year. To a traveler buying a ticket or paying for parking, these facilities appear to be highly lucrative, localized monopolies operating with a captive audience. They host dozens of competing airlines, orchestrate thousands of daily flights, and feature endless corridors of high-end retail. Yet, the data reveals a severe contradiction. Historically, 68% of the world's airports actually operate at a net loss. The aviation industry is currently experiencing a structural erosion of capital efficiency. The cost of maintaining these enormous facilities is actively decoupling from the revenue they generate. To understand why these massive transit hubs become financial black holes, we have to discard traditional business logic. Instead, we will analyze the exact mechanics of their capital expenditures, their operating expenses, and the rigid mathematical boundaries of infrastructure scale. We will see that volume growth alone does not guarantee financial viability. In modern aviation, adding more passengers can actually trigger deeper economic losses. This chart shows the distribution of global airport costs in 2021. The red blocks represent capital expenditures, or CapEx, which reliably account for 40% of all global airport costs. These are incredibly lumpy investments. An airport authority cannot build half a runway or half a terminal to perfectly match a gradual increase in passenger demand. Physical infrastructure is radically expensive. Consider the difference between a highway and a commercial runway. A highway requires a relatively shallow foundation. A runway demands a deep, multi-layered subbase engineered to safely absorb the impact of a 500-ton aircraft landing at 150 miles per hour. That same paving must integrate sophisticated beaconing, heavy-duty drainage, and specialized navigational systems directly into the concrete. Because this infrastructure faces extreme, rapid wear and tear from those continuous impacts, 63% of an airport's capital costs is consumed entirely by pure depreciation. Today, airports are also burdened with what economists call non-revenue CapEx. Facilities must execute mandatory spending on environmental decarbonization, sustainable aviation fuel infrastructure, and cybersecurity networks. These upgrades increase the total capital base without adding a single new paying passenger. An airport's foundation is built on massive, unavoidable upfront costs. Those assets deteriorate rapidly and demand unyielding financial reinvestment simply to exist. If we return to our cost distribution chart, the lower blue blocks represent operating expenses, or OPEX, which consume the remaining 60% of total airport costs. An airport is not a passive building. It is a highly active labor and service platform. Personnel and contracted services alone account for roughly 62% of all daily running costs. These labor costs are structurally rigid. The facility requires 24/7 staffing and must maintain rigorous federal security compliance at all times. Continuous specialized maintenance is required for baggage handling systems, air traffic control towers, and environmental management protocols. Then there is the baseline utility problem. The energy required to heat, cool, and illuminate a multi-million square foot terminal is virtually identical every single day. These massive utility and security staffing requirements do not scale down. The financial burn rate is exactly the same, whether the airport processes 10,000 passengers or just 100 on a given day. Because airports lack flexibility to adapt to rapid demand shocks, they are locked into a daily cash burn that is entirely detached from daily revenue. These massive CapEx and OpEx burdens are primarily offset by regulated aeronautical fees, like landing charges and passenger service fees, but there is a severe revenue shortfall. Between 2015 and 2023, inflation-adjusted airport user charges actually fell by 3.3%. The traditional infrastructure assumption suggests that expanding capacity to process more volume will naturally achieve economies of scale, eventually fixing this deficit. This chart, mapping total cost per passenger by airport size, dismantles that assumption. Look at the data for facilities processing over 40 million passengers per year. Rather than getting cheaper, unit costs for these mega hubs spiked drastically, reaching $38.51 per passenger in 2021. This is a textbook case of diseconomies of scale.
Land scarcity around major cities means any further expansion requires exponentially more expensive engineering and complex real estate acquisitions. There is also a compounding operational drag. Severe slot congestion forces aircraft into long, inefficient taxi times, burning both fuel and airline profit. The environmental cost scales poorly as well. London Heathrow handles nearly 80 million passengers a year, while London Gatwick handles roughly 40. Pushing past that 40 million threshold nearly doubles the emissions footprint per million passengers. The data points to a clear Goldilocks zone. Mid-sized airports handling 25 to 50 million workload units achieve optimal cost spreading without triggering the structural bloat of a megahub. The core aeronautical product intrinsically loses money.
Attempting to outgrow the problem by building a massive megahub only accelerates the financial decay. If the core product operates at a loss and scaling up exacerbates the problem, how do the 32% of profitable airports actually survive? They rely on the dual-till commercial model. Modern airports only survive by operating as high-end shopping malls and parking real estate ventures. When you map the economics, the sheer weight of CapEx and OpEx heavily outweighs the revenue from standard aeronautical fees. Non-aeronautical revenue, like retail, dining, and parking, represents nearly 40% of total income. It acts as the critical financial lifeline, bringing the system into balance. This is why terminal retail is uniquely expensive. Vendors pay high, percentage-based concession rents to the airport authority, and they face extreme logistics. Every single item delivered to a terminal store must be screened through security checkpoints. The vendors must also pay premium wages to specialized staff who endure these daily operational drags. Owning an airport means managing inescapable physical infrastructure and fixed labor costs, subsidized entirely by a captive retail market. The future of global aviation infrastructure does not lie in building endlessly complex megahubs. It requires right-sizing facilities into the optimal 25 to 50 million passenger tier, prioritizing operational agility over sheer volume.